Welcome to Legacy News, where you can stay updated with the latest economic news. Today, it will be all about inflation, featuring Chamath Palihapitiya alongside Jason Calacanis and David Friedberg. Now, before we proceed, please do like the video, and if you like the related news, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Moving on to the main topic, let's listen to what Chamath Palihapitiya has to say. Chamath Palihapitiya. This is the first time I've genuinely seen it in my 20 years. To give you a sense of this, the markets are now working to build inflation expectations, which the Fed appears unwilling to address. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, in February, the market saw their first capitulation. What happened was that people suddenly digested all of the information Stan had just given them and understood, quote, wait a minute, all of this money is going to drive prices higher, and so what they did was they took them, unquote. They raised the 10-year bond yield by a specified amount, such as 100 basis points, and the markets went crazy. Hey, hold on, nothing to see here, the Fed stated as they went from like 0.75 to 1.75. Everything is going to work out all right. But since then, the focus has shifted from the bleeding to the knowledge that commodity prices have increased by 50%. There's a joke that if you see a bed of lumber traveling across a train, it's like $1 billion worth of lumber just because of how expensive it is. As you are aware, there are shortages everywhere. You'll be surprised to learn that Chipotle issued the following guidelines today, stating that the minimum wage will be raised to $15. And that means in 3 years, you may earn $100,000 per year at Chipotle. That is the amount of money some engineers and programmers in the United States have. On the company's earnings call last week, the CEO of Uber stated that some Uber drivers in New York were paid an average hourly rate of $38, or $38. So what does it all mean? I believe I was standing, but we've separated in this strange spot, the federal agency in charge of maintaining fiscal stability. And then the overall capital markets used to work in tandem, and they're no longer working in tandem because you have a narrative and a set of data points that aren't supported by the facts. And this is an interesting thing. Isn't there no way to fight the CDC in the case of the American people? I mean, governors may act on their own, cities can act on their own, but at the end of the day, the teachers' unions are working with the CBC, the school camps, and you have this advice if you're stuck in this morass. In the capital markets, that's not necessarily true, and so you can change asset prices based on sentiment. And I think what everybody is saying in this example is that we're past the emergency. We have overinvested in the economy. We need to reopen, and we now have to deal with the fact that prices are skyrocketing. That is to say, there will be inflation, and if you do nothing, the capital markets will act on our behalf. As a result, the markets are currently suffering a carnage. And by the way, I took the only time that you government officials try to be on the other side of Janet Yellen last Friday, kind of casually in an interview. She dipped her toe into the water as Treasury Secretary and said something that said inflation was possible, and she was practically slapped and forced to issue a statement disavowing her words less than 24 hours later. So that's where you're at right now. David. People aren't pricing in huge interest rate hikes because inflation, as measured by the CPI, is up 4% and increasing. As a result, they are now subject to a greater discount, and so the valuations get absolutely hammered. So, it's absolutely souring that the markets are basically souring on this Biden agenda. I'm starting to worry if I'll end up like Jimmy Carter in this situation because all he had to do was leave things alone while COVID was winding down. We were given a vaccination. It was only a matter of getting it to as many people as possible, and while the COVID-19 recovery is taking shape, they continue to promote this absurd $10 trillion tax and spending plan that is overstimulating the economy, producing inflation, and raising interest rates. Chamath. No, it isn't the case yet, meaning he did a good job on the vaccine. The federal government's stance on reopening remains stalled, and he's seeking a massive increase in incremental funding, which we all know will be inefficiently spent. There aren't any other viable options. As a result, he believes that spending and putting money into the economy will help him win re-election, which is correct. Other reporter. So he's been spending, he's trying to be offset by taking higher taxes on the wealthy, which, from his point of view, is not going to affect the analysis. David. This will backfire massively. If the economy approves, we'll be in it for a post-COVID. And right now, that is all at risk because it's not like you're saying they're keeping the economy, closed-door parts of it, way too long. They don't overcompensate. Chamath. Their overcompensation, their incapacity to begin with money is so true because your labor force suffers as a result of people making enough money by not working. Other reporter. It's a problem for a lot of firms right now. You have restaurants that are overbooked and can't obtain servers. For example, Jim Cramer claims that he can pay up to $18 an hour for servers. He's going to move it into $20, which will make a difference because with that extra $300, I think in federal state unemployment plus $300 to $700. I believe it is dependent on your location. People are saying, well, people still go to work. And it's like, yeah, but you're saving money on commuting and you probably have side hustles, so you've lowered your commute expense. So what will persuade folks to return to work? We are now running a dry run with cryptocurrency and, stimulus experiment with Ruby. And the outcome on the Ruby experiment is negative economic growth, or growth that is slowed. If people don't want to work and contribute, we won't be able to be productive. So to get back to your original question, when will you be able to return to work? Chamath. So just to your point, on Friday, Montana, which is part of the federal government's, pandemic-related UI benefits program, basically said that we're canceling those benefits and we're opting out. Plus, I believe they're now offering a $1,200 bonus for returning to work. The result is that Montana now has a significant labor shortage, but it is not limited to Montana. Every state in the union is involved. Isn't it true that we have two conflicting forces? We have so much stimulus that our workforce is undermotivated. We have a higher tax burden. That will also be squandered, resulting in a low return on investment, and now our input costs are rising. In order to attract more customers, prices are increasing. Everything is going to end up in a crisis. Other reporter. So here's the governor of Mississippi's quote: "Unemployment benefits are intended to help Mississippians who have lost their jobs due to no fault of their own." Following several interactions with Mississippi small company owners and employees over the last few weeks, it has become evident that the pandemic unemployment assistance and other similar programs authorized by Congress in May of last year were not essential at the time. So I can imagine the blow you'll suffer from voters, from mobs of people who believe in income inequality in May of this year. When you say something like, "I think we have to stop sending people free money, as a result they go back to work," this is a difficult position to be in. In California, this is currently happening on a micro level. Is this correct? As the show has evolved, we have a $75 billion surplus this year. Instead of doing that, the government could decrease taxes and try to get Tesla, Oracle, and other venture capital firms to return. What could we do with that? What could we do with it? David. $75 is a fantastic price. So of the $75 billion surplus, 1/3 of it comes from the federal bailout, which we certainly don't need, and the rest comes from Washington's money printing. Exactly. The remaining 2/3 are due to all of the unanticipated tax receipts from the stock market boom last year. Because he had all of these California taxpayers paying capital gains taxes on it, but what does it emphasize for me? And given that we had a net migration loss of 182,000 in 2020, I'm curious how many of those taxpayers have departed the state. As a result, I'm counting on those people to leave the state and pay their taxes this year. And where is this surplus going to come from next year if I don't break the stock market with this outrageous tax expenditure? And what this demonstrates to me is that I believe there are people in Washington and Sacramento in particular who have lost sight of the fact that at the end of the day, the private sector and the public sector are a partnership. Because the private sector generates the largesse and wealth necessary to fund the public sector and to fund the creation of public goods, education, law and order, and social programs. And they began to perceive things in a different light. They don't perceive the private sector as a cow that needs to be milked or a sheep that needs to be sheared. Instead, they want to skin the sheep rather than share it and enter their market. There is a genuine danger of slaying the golden goose. I suppose you could phrase it that way, and I believe you did during the Clinton administration, just to compare and contrast. The federal government spending as a percentage of GDP ranged from 8.5% to 22%. We had a boom and that was the range. Isn't it true that it works when federal spending as a percentage of GDP is about 20%? That isn't to say that government spending can't be increased, it simply means that when the economy grows, government spending will rise. But now with federal spending at above 30% of GDP, everything is starting to fall apart. That is the issue. The size is enormous. This is the end segment for today. Thank you for tuning in to Legacy News, and I hope you all learned a lesson with this issue. If you want to extend your support, leave a like, hit that subscribe button, and notification bell. With that, you will be helping us reach a wider audience. We appreciate you all. Till next time.